Do you have a problem with bindweed in your yard? Learn how to take it from this to this. Hey everyone, this is Linda from Back Third Acre. Today I want to talk to you about bindweed. I have a pretty nasty patch of it in my yard and I have been working on eradicating it for the last few years. So I'm going to take you through the steps that I've used and what the results have been from my attempts. So bindweed is a perennial and it is invasive, very invasive, and it's notoriously difficult to remove. So it's related to the morning glory family, and it's called the wild morning glory. So it has these lovely white flowers on it, and the seeds coming from those flowers have a very hard shell, and they can last up to 20 or more years once and laying dormant in the soil. So really preventing them from going to flower is key to the eradication process. So what I did first of all was tore out some of the hedge that the morning glory was growing in, because to be able to get down to the roots and to deal with the problem was impossible while the hedge was so still there and so thick. It also had some blackberry, which is also invasive in the area that I live in. So to deal with prickly blackberries and morning glory in a very thick hedge was problematic, to say the least. So first thing I did was obviously dig out the hedge and then laid some landscape fabric down, which helped bring the roots of the morning glory up to the surface. So they were just running underneath the black plastic. And I left that landscape fabric or plastic down for at least a year, which, made the yard look a little bit ugly for a while, but it was ultimately helpful in the long run. So we pulled the black plastic back. Morning glory will go for any glimmer of sunshine, so making sure that you have it quite thickly over the ground and that there is no areas for light to get through is essential. So once we pulled the plastic back, the roots were really close to the surface and we were able to go through and dig those out. And you have to be very careful digging them out that you're not breaking them into a ton of little pieces, because with morning glory new shoots will develop if you're leaving any of that root or the rhizome left in the ground. So you need to be very careful in pulling it out and not breaking it apart. So after digging it all up, I laid a very, very heavy layer of wood chips and mulch across the top. That winter, I also fenced that area off so that the chickens could go in there. So the chickens worked that soil and kept it very, very clear for the full winter. Then I made the decision to plant squash plants in there. So I planted them closer than I would normally do in my garden, and that created a shade. They thrived there because they had such good nutrients from the wood chips and the chicken manure, but they provided shade, and morning glory or bindweed does not like shade, so that was very, very helpful. The second year after the squash came out, I was able to, obviously, to take those out at the end of the season and just leave the ground bare and put the chickens back in there to do their thing. So keeping that ground covered in shade plants was essential to kind of keep the morning glory from re-emerging. Anytime little shoots come up, I go out there and pull them up. And unfortunately, we have a chain link fence between us and our neighbors, and where that's located, the neighbors aren't as concerned about the bindweed as I am. So it's just growing on the other side of the fence, which means my work is going to be more involved because it will thrive on one side of the fence and not on the other. So I'm going to continue to need to be vigilant in keeping it under control, probably indefinitely. So I'll continue to work with the neighbors and see what we can do there, but it's kind of a hard to reach location for them as well. Step one, you want to remove the excess vegetation so you can get to the roots of the bindweed effectively. So if you're tackling a hedge like this one, where it's super thick, this is a boxwood, it's blackberries and the bindweed all intertwined there, it's extremely difficult to get to the root. And you're just going to have a reoccurring problem moving forward if you don't get the whole thing out. As you can see, it twines around everything. I had a long stretch, so this whole area here was covered in hedge and bindweed. Step two, you want to cover with a weed barrier and wait at least a year. So the heavier the weed barrier, the better, making sure you don't let any sunshine through and covering it thoroughly. So next, you want to remove that weed barrier and the surface roots and add a heavy layer of wood chips and mulch. So you can see this whole area here, even the greenery to the right was all covered in bindweed. Next, add chickens or manure to improve the soil health. So bindweed is attracted to clay or sandy soil, so improving the organic matter in your soil will reduce its ability to thrive. Plant squash or other shade casting annuals, things that you can remove at the end of the season to ensure that the bindweed isn't continuing to thrive in those areas. The benefit of heavy plantings of squash is you get some zucchini as well, or petipan or whatever items that you're looking for. But you're looking at it to serve the purpose of shade. Other weeds do pop up. I had this whole area, instead of tomatoes and things in there, I had it all of squash the previous year. So that's a little piece of bindweed that has popped up through the surface, but it's really quite minimal and easy to pull out. Be vigilant about removing those little sprouts. Thank you for joining me on Back Third Acre, and I hope you the best success in removing bindweed from your yard. Take care.